Ask if your blessing upon council to direct and prosper its deliberations to the advantage of thy glory and to the true welfare of the people for whom we serve. Amen. On behalf of the Glenelg Shire Council, I respectfully acknowledge traditional lands and waters of the Gunditjmara, Jabberjali and Mawandit people and their respective cultural heritages. I acknowledge as elders past and present here at today's gathering and through them to all Aboriginal people. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people provide an important contribution to Australia's cultural heritage and identity. We respectfully acknowledge the Aboriginal and Torres Strait community living throughout the Glenelg Shire and the contribution they make to the Glenelg Shire's prosperity and well-being. Now, to those present in the gallery today, by attending the public meeting of the Council, you're consenting to your image, voice and comments being recorded and published. Council meetings may be live streamed and the CEO will enable a copy of the recording to the public. Receipt of apologies, one apology from Councillor Wilson. Question time. So questions taken on notice at the previous meeting there, they are on pages 3 and 4. Move to item 6.2, questions from the gallery. So I'll start with Mr. Hum.
Thanks for that. My first question is regarding childcare services within the region, because it's a critical need within our community. As you're aware, the provision of childcare is central to enabling parents to participate with employment, service provision and the growing of the local economy. The failure to provide such services usually entraps these families to a lower income, reduced quality of life, and in some cases generational cycle of poverty, whilst impacting on businesses and their ability to provide continuity of service. Now, I recognise that this is essentially a state government responsibility. However, because of the problem that we have as far as ensuring that adequate childcare services are available, and what's actually triggered this is that I received a couple of calls over the school holidays. The Casterton childcare services were apparently cancelled at short notice because of staffing anomalies, and this threw a few people into a bit of a tailspin because they were unable to attend work. And you know, it's an important issue. As council, we have a responsibility to these families to try and make sure that the services are available. And I'm simply asking if you can elaborate, please, what intervention or advocacy meetings you and the executive have had with the Early Childhood and Prep Minister, Ingrid Stitt, over the past 6 months, and what progress, if any, has been made. In other words, have they made some promises that they're going to top up their staffing? Are they going to expand some of the services within the region? Where are we at as a community as far as being able to fulfil this really important need?
Thank you, Mr. Hum, and that is a fantastic question. You hit the nail right on the head. Very important to the community. It's one of our top priorities at the moment. I'll just unpack, obviously, what you've said here. With regards to advocacy, we've written to the Minister, so Minister Ingrid Stitt. We've also had a meeting with the Shadow Minister, Angie Bell, regarding this very topic with the Council. So, as I said, this is something that's on top of Council's mind. Now, you do go into here with some operational questions regarding staffing childcare facilities. So, Ms Miller, who's the Director of Community Services, if you'd be able to provide some further information to Mr Hum on what we are trying to do to alleviate this very important issue.
Thank you, Mr Hum. So we have 6 centres across the Shire, 3 in Portland, 1 in Dartmoor, 1 in Haywood and 1 in Casterton.
Can you
hear me?
So
yep.
People can
you hear me?
Online.
Otherwise I'm bending over.
I know when I watch it online, sometimes it's really hard.
No, that's fine. To give you a bit of a snapshot, we do have waiting lists for long daycare and for our kindergarten programs, obviously weighted to more towards the long daycare, and that's specifically in the Portland centres in the Portland Child and Family Complex, and we have a waiting list for the Casterton Complex as well. We've also written, on top of what the Mayor has already outlined, we've also written to the Productivity Commission in May. We've put a submission in there about the childcare issues in the Shire. We hosted Angie Bell, Shadow Minister for Youth Services, in May, and we are advocating all the time to the state government through the Department of Education around the workforce issues and the barriers that we're facing attracting workforce to the Shire. So,
can you tell me, are the wait times getting any shorter? Are we winning?
Point of order, Mr Mayor.
There is just one question. I'll allow you able to answer that question, Ms Knight. So
I think the wait times is not as simple as it seems. There is a priority care, a priority wait list, so it's not just your name goes on the list and it's the next one off. We do have a priority list for more vulnerable children, so it's not as simple as it probably seems. Yeah.
thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Mr Hum. Your second question, sir.
Yeah, I'll just wait for the mic.
Yeah.
Second question relates to the attendance in Portland by federal and state ministers regarding the offshore wind farm proposal. As we're all pretty much aware, this has actually hit the news. The proposal is that we're going to have wind farms dotted from Port Macdonald right through to Warrnambool, and the concern that myself and many of us have is that it's going to actually destroy the outlook.
So, Mr Hum, what I'd actually like you to... I understand you've got that question there and there's a lot of descriptions. I'd actually like you to sort of ask the question, if that's possible, sir.
Can I just provide a little bit of context first, if you don't mind? The main beneficiaries of this are the overseas interests because of the huge financial incentives that government provides. The concerns that are raised within the community are the vista, the impact on the wildlife, as in
so again, Mr.
birds,
Hum,
as in sea, as in
Mr. Hum, if I can stop you there, sir.
Life.
Mr. Hum, if I can stop you there, sir. So what I'm asking you to do, so you're making assumptions there. What I'd actually like you to do is actually ask the question rather than including all these assumptions.
Okay, so my question is, based on the potential damage that this has for Portland and the local economy, does this council commit to ensuring that you will stand up and protect our lifestyle? Will you, in fact, intervene on our behalf with firmness, loud, continual, uncompromising arguments to ensure that this does not go ahead, because we as a community value what we've got here, and the short-term benefits of a few jobs during the manufacturing phase are far outweighed by what we may potentially lose now and for future generations. We need you guys to stand up and be our voice.
So thank you, Mr. Hum, for the question. As you may or may not understand, it's actually a Commonwealth Government consultation process. So it is not actually Council's process, it's a Commonwealth Government process. So you have a lot of valid concerns, and I can't disagree with those, sir. So what I would actually encourage you to do, there's information sessions and feedback sessions that the Commonwealth Government is facilitating. So what I would encourage you to do is actually provide those concerns there and find out that information there.
That's fine. That doesn't answer my question.
That's,
I asked if Council would stand up for us.
So, Mr. Hum, that was my question there, sir. So your third question.
As I said, we just want Council to stand
Mr.
up for
Hum,
us.
if your question...
Okay, my third question relates to the budget. Again, over the last couple of weeks I did a bit of a comparative analysis between Moyne Shire and Glenelg Shire, because they are like councils. Employee numbers are comparative. The budget expenditure and infrastructure development. The Moyne Shire attributes the majority of its infrastructure budget expenditure and development to Port Fairy, just like the Glenelg Shire concentrates a large portion on Portland, and the outlying areas tend to get the crumbs. Road maintenance, when looking at that, the major expenditure item for road infrastructure and maintenance compared to that of Moyne Shire has shown that, in actual fact, we have 38% less roads to maintain. That's just a bit over a third less than Moyne Shire. And yet the rate income that the councils actually claim, Moyne Shire take $5.7 million less off its ratepayers than what Glenelg Shire does. This is an anomaly that I simply do not understand, and I would like you to explain it, please.
So, thank you, Mr. Hum. Obviously, you're trying to compare apples with oranges there. Sorry, Mr. Hum. So you're obviously comparing apples with oranges there. So while we may be similar-sized councils, we might provide different services. So I can understand that. You are quoting, obviously, figures and comparing the budget from Moyne. So what I'd like to do is actually take that on notice so I can give you a considered answer to check that information out. And that's probably where I'd leave that one there, sir, rather than providing feedback that's not correct.
Sorry about it. Yeah.
So, correct, sir.
Great.
Thank you. Mr. Punton.
Now, my first question is about heritage significant buildings. When a building of heritage significance is granted money from the Glenelg Shire Council, who oversees the heritage work and is responsible for the colour used in the church at Tirrandarra?
Thank you for your question, Mr. Punton. What I might do is throw that to Mr. Hull, who'd have a little bit more working knowledge of that policy and that question, sir.
Thank you for your question, Mr. Punton. The church at Tirrandarra, the painting of the exterior of the building there was not funded by a heritage grant. Council has provided a heritage grant to that facility, but not for that external painting. To the second, I can add to that Council engages heritage architects to provide advice on colours associated with heritage grants. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hull. Second question, Mr. Punton.
Second question is in an email response to a question I asked last Glenelg Shire Council meeting, and I'll quote from that. The quote is, "A council is under the direct control of the executive," end quote. If so, there's $500,000 to be saved by removing the unnecessary burden of the elected representatives. Is this a fact?
I'm not quite understanding your question, Mr. Punton. If you could probably provide some clarity there.
Who is the executive?
Of this council?
Yes.
The executive officer would be the CEO.
That's what this letter quoted. The council is under the direct control of the executive.
Correct.
Is that a fact?
The CEO carries out the daily duties of the council. That is correct.
So you are...
Point of order.
Okay.
You're getting into dialogue.
Yep.
Maybe take it on notice.
Fair enough, yes. Third question, Mr. Punton.
Third question is also from that response. The Australian Federal Constitution is the supreme law of Australia. In an email received regarding the annual council charging rates, it stated that, quote, "The absence of any reference to local government in the Australian Constitution is just irrelevant." Does the Glenelg Shire Council agree that the Federal Constitution is irrelevant?
So, thank you for your question, Mr. Punton. I can pass to Mr. Hull, but I could pretty much state that we derive our powers from the Local Government Act 2020, which I'm sure Mr. Hull will probably echo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Punton, I think the response was actually quite clear where the powers for local government fall. If you wish to carry on with your conspiracy theories about the council is not legitimate, I suggest you provide some legal documentation to support that. I'm not going to spend any more ratepayer time and money on trying to go through that particular matter. Thank you.
Thank you for your...
Not even the answer to the question.
So, thank you for your question, Mr.
My questions have
Punton.
been ignored.
The CEO would like to make an additional comment, Mr. Punton.
Mr. Punton, thanks for the question. I note you actually pulled out a sentence there from a very comprehensive response that was provided and drafted through Council's legal, yes, one sentence out of the whole document. This has been tested, and the relevance to the part you identified is that was a question at law at a point in time where a reference was made where the local government wasn't in that particular space. It is very clear that the local government is actually appointed under the Local Government Act as an instrument of the state government, and that has been tested in law. Thank you for your question.
Mr. Bird. Oh, sorry, Michael.
Thanks for that. Mr Mayor, I'll be asking 3 questions and they're all on the proposed offshore Southern Ocean wind farm proposal. And for those who don't know, this is stage 3. So it's been the Hunter, then Bass, and now us. $4 billion project, the biggest project that's ever hit this shire. So it's very important. Question number 1. Mr Mayor, as you are aware, the proposed offshore Southern Ocean wind farm area takes in the entire coastline of the Glenelg Shire from Nelson in the west through to East Tirrandarra and is adjacent to areas such as the internationally recognised Ramsar wetland site, the Great Southwest Walk, as we saw on the TV a couple of weeks ago, and not to forget world-class whale nurseries and extensive recreational and commercial fishing areas. Mr Mayor, what is the Glenelg Shire's position
Thank you.
on the proposed Southern Ocean offshore wind farm in our region?
Thank you, Mr Byrne. As I articulated earlier, it's currently at a Commonwealth consultation process. So I'd encourage you, for those concerns that you've raised there, I'd actually encourage you, sorry, can you have quiet in the gallery, please? So I'd actually encourage you to provide that feedback for that Commonwealth process, sir.
Question number 2, and could please everyone remember that response to my first question. Mr Mayor, I now go back to the Bass consultation. I note the Gippsland consultation process and put forward the following submissions on the Gippsland offshore wind energy infrastructure area proposal. I'll put them in my hand. There they are, and I'll forward them on to you, Scott, and to Shellpat for verification. Those 4 submissions are from the Bass Coast Shire Council, South Gippsland Shire Council, East Gippsland West Council, Wellington Shire Council. Mr Mayor, does the Glenelg Shire Council intend to make a submission advocating a position on the proposed offshore wind farms in our region?
Thank you for
and I'll just take them, David, could you give them to the Mayor and to Shellpat? There's 4 this afternoon.
Thank you, Mr Byrne. As you're quite right, we are a key stakeholder. Again, this is out for Commonwealth consultation process, and like the community, we will meet with them, like the community will, and decide then, sir. So, as for you wanting a position right now, sorry, we're asking it's community consultation from the Commonwealth Government, so it's not to do with the council.
Sorry, Scott, you didn't answer my question. The question again, I'll give it to you.
Yeah, I've got it
Mr.
here,
Mayor.
So, Mr. Byrne, I've got it right here. You're asking,
Can you
does
read
council?
it to me?
Well, you've said it there. Does council? You've read the question,
Read
sir.
it back to me, please.
My position, sir, is that we're a key stakeholder, and we will meet with them as well to discuss. So we're not going to give a position beforehand. So that's my answer, sir. So your third question.
You haven't got a position.
So, Mr. Byrne, yeah, that's correct. So your third question, sir. Third question?
Yes. In tonight's agenda, section 14.3, you'll have it in front of you. Part A, it's the customer satisfaction survey, Mayor. Under the heading, council plan and policy linkage. It states the following: our voice and action. A highly engaged and capable local government leading Glenelg to ensure the needs and aspirations of our community are realised. Whilst I recognise the federal government's role in the consultation process, what steps are Glenelg Shire Council taking to ensure that all key stakeholders are engaged, including business and community members along our coastline, from Nelson to East Tarandara?
Thank you, Mr Byrne. I'll lead off. Thank you for that question. What is Council doing? So I want to add a quick bite there, but I will throw over to the CEO. We will provide as much information as we possibly can to the public to engage in that process. That's what I would say for that, but I'll leave that to the CEO on what operationally we will do.
Thanks for the question, Mr Byrne. Just in probably try and answer a little bit of question 2 as well. As a key stakeholder, Glenelg Shire has been requested to participate in an engagement session. So the same department that came down with Minister Bowen to make that announcement is doing information sessions at the Portland Golf Club. They've reached out to engage also with council. Like the community, there's a portal for council to consider its position. If we have a position on that, we're keeping an open mind until we meet with that government department, listen to the whole story around it. So this is only the initial stages of the offshore implementation statement number 2 that was issued in, I think it was March this year. A part of that was the Commonwealth Government's roadmap to doing their consultation. So what we have done internally is we've actually put that out on our website. We've shared that with the community to say, this consultation is occurring. Here's an opportunity for the community to actually have their feedback and have their say via that portal. So there is a link on our webpage that anybody in the community can go in and make a submission in relation to the consultation process. We will reserve our right, whether we have a position on this, until we've met with that Commonwealth Department out of respect to hear the whole story. There are parts of the story in the community already. I'm acutely aware of that. I know there's a meeting tomorrow night. There's planned meetings also about the federal government or the Commonwealth Government's consultation process. So I believe Mr Tian's holding a meeting that's been announced. There's one on in the community, I believe, tomorrow night. There's another one being held at the golf club in a couple of weeks' time. The whole community is encouraged to access our website, and the links and the information to the whole story are there, so people can make an informed decision and make a submission. Our stance at this stage is it is a Commonwealth process, and we're sitting back and we'll eagerly await the outcome of that consultation.
Just thanks for that answer, Paul. I appreciate that. Just could you let the public know as soon as the Glenelg Shire Council, make a decision on this?
Thank you, Mr Byrne. Yep, we'll take that on board. Mr Jowett.
Good evening. Considering that this council is looking for ways to save money and stop waste, when is this council going to stop giving away our money on what some people are calling the flawed heritage grant scheme?
Thank you, Mr Jowett. What I might actually do is throw over to the CEO, or actually probably David, Mr Hull.
Thank you, Mr Jowett, for the question. We had a discussion with councillors only just earlier this evening on the future for the heritage grants. The review of the policy is due for later this year. I think it's around October. Council will take the opportunity under that review period to have a look at the future of the criteria for heritage grants.
Next question, Mr Jowett.
My final question. Can you please inform us what is happening with the Council Customer Service Centre in Percy Street? And what are the Council's plans for the future of this council leased property?
Thank you, Mr Jowett. And what I might actually throw over to Mr Hole again, Director of Corporate Services.
Thank you, Mr Jowett. So the customer service will be transitioning back to the Cliff Street office in the coming months. We haven't actually set on a date there. There'll be some comms coming out for public to make sure that they're quite aware of when that changeover deal will be, and we're in negotiations with the landlord about the future for that side as well. Thank you.
And will we know more about what's happening?
I said we'll be having customer service come back in the next couple of months, so we'll actually have some comms out to the public about that transition, I would imagine within the next few weeks.
So the answer, yes, there'll be some comms coming out on that. Thank you, Mr Jowett. Are there any questions from the Observer? 7. Councillors' declarations of conflict of interest. Are there any conflicts of interest for tonight's meeting? No. Confirmation of minutes, councillors. There's a recommendation there on page 5. Councillor Hawker.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move the recommendation that the minutes of the council meeting held on Tuesday 27th of June 2023 as circulated be confirmed.
Thank you, Councillor Hawker. Councillor Smith to second.
Happy to second, Mr Mayor.
Any opposed? Any commentary? No, all good. All those in favour? So moved. 6-0. Petitions? None. Deputations? Nil. Notices of motion? Nil. Committee reports? Nil. Move on to management reports. Item 14.1. Councillors, a recommendation there on page 6. Thank you, Councillor Smith.
Happy to move the recommendation that Council approve the Councillor and Chief Executive Officer Leave of Absence Register presented as a confidential attachment circulation under section 35.
The Local Government Act 2020. Second it.
Happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Any opposed? Councillor Smith, any commentary? No. Anyone else? All those in favour? Passed. 6-0. 5-0, good point, yes. 14.2, Councillors' Quarterly Expenditure Report. Councillors, there's a recommendation there on page 8. Councillor Carr.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move the recommendation that Council receives the Councillors' Quarterly Expenditure Report for the period 1st of April 2023 to the 30th of June 2023.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Do we have a seconder?
Happy to second, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Any opposed? No. Councillor Carr, any commentary?
It's a standard report that comes out each quarter, Mr Mayor. Councillors are entitled to an allowance, and we're obviously also entitled under the Local Government Act to be reimbursed for any expenses incurred as a result of doing our councillor duties. It's all there in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Councillor Smith, any further comments? No. Councillors? No. All those in favour? So passed 5-0. (14.3) Customer Satisfaction Survey. Councillors, there's a recommendation there on page 11. Thank you, Councillor Carr.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move the recommendation that Council notes the results of the 2023 Local Government Community Satisfaction Survey and authorises the public release of the detailed findings for the Glenelg Shire Council.
Thank you. And
Happy to second, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Stevens. Any opposed? No. Councillor Carr.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, overall performance has decreased by 14 points from 61 in 2022 to 47 in 2023. There were some positives. Outcomes in the survey, customer service and waste management, they held, and congratulations to the staff and those teams. Some negatives: overall council direction, value for money, lobbying, consultation and engagement in sealed local roads. The list goes on. 401 people took the survey. 306 of those people were over the age of 50. the feedback that we've got in this survey is from experienced and knowledgeable, constituents that we've been elected to represent. They've sent us a pretty strong message that we as a council and a leadership team need to listen to. Whilst there's been many changes in the past 12 months, we could spend a lot of time looking back, but it's important that we look forward. Let's own the results of these surveys. Let's learn from it, take action and improve across all areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I agree with Councillor Carr. We need to own these results. The results from this community satisfaction survey are the lowest in 10 years, and we do have to own it. We need to work together and commit to improving those overall results. Our staff want to work in an organisation that's a positive place to work, and they are also community members. And it's our responsibility as a council to ensure that we're doing the best job we can. So together we need to make sure we make an agreement to improve the standard, improve the work ethic and improve our positive reflection to our community.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Councillor Hawker.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, the survey results are disappointing, but considering there has been a lot going on and the amount of changes that we've had, but I'm not going to go into excuses. It is what it is. We need to do better. But what keeps going through my head, Mr Mayor, is when you have groups of people hounding residents to sign petitions, taking them to people's workplaces, hounding for signatures, and then the harassment and bullying in public and social media platforms, you must wonder if that was removed, would we have been so low? So let's have a think about that. We've had this for over 12 months. We need to do better, but not just us. People need to do better. So yes, let's be better, but let's be better together. Let's be positive, but let's be positive together. And let's move on, but let's move on together.
Thank you, Councillor Hawker.
I'm not sure what I can say that hasn't been said already, guys, but I hope you go. Obviously, this report is we're going to vote to release it to the public for everybody to see, because that's part of it. The report measures, as other councils have said, typically against each other and vary for money and services and infrastructure, community consultation and engagement, decisions made in the interest of the community, customer service, local infrastructure, facilities, services, and also our overall council direction. Most large rural councils had a decline in their satisfaction, but ours was a little bit greater than the average, and that's to be accepted. This council has gone through some changes recently, namely the revision of the rating structure and the exit from hack services. To the public, these decisions on the surface could easily be seen as a distrust, dissatisfaction, and even dishonesty. And I believe that the underlying result of this survey, as it is heavily based on public perception, revolves around these issues, and perhaps myself as a councillor, I can only speak on behalf of myself, not pushing enough to get those out into the open, and my perspective of those. Although this report shows a decline in satisfaction, is only a blip in the timeline of this council, and it's now our job to take these findings and work to achieve better results for everybody next year and beyond. Importantly, I think we should acknowledge the fact that our new CEO, Paul Phelan, has come into his role at what could only be described as a turbulent time. And I'm sure that in some way Paul feels that it's his responsibility to work on this survey, and I trust that he has already taken full ownership of this report and has begun work on the recommendations received, as have we. But this responsibility rests on the shoulders equally of the Mayor of the day, councillors, the CEO, the leadership team, and also the staff. We all have a part to play as individuals in the organisation. I certainly recognise the passion and hard work that all of our staff generally put into their roles at council, and encourage them to continue even through what has seemed to be a bit of a thankless and uninspiring time at council. To work in the public sector it really is a true gift, and I think it's important that we remember to cherish it.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. I just wouldn't mind adding a few comments, councillors. I know it's not common for the Mayor to speak on issues. It is important for Council to own it and take the learnings from the report. And we've done that straight away. So we've instituted the listening post once again after COVID to listen to the community, and that was one of the criticisms of the report. One was also roads. Roads was a major issue in that report as well. So that's why the Shire has launched the roads portal. So it's an information part of our website where people can actually look up road grading, when it's happening, upgrades, who owns the road. So that information, getting that information out to the public is important, and that's what's been missing. We've also asked Council, so the CEO, to increase our media. So one of the requirements, actually, one of the recommendations, one of the 4 key recommendations, is that there is a need for Council to take stock and look to understand how perceptions can be improved. Strong and targeted communications ensure residents are aware of actions Council is currently undertaking. Now, we looked at a few of those key areas myself, and some of the services we actually increased on the previous year, but yet the satisfaction reduced. So there's a disconnect there. We're not informing our residents of the good work we do. And that's why, as a councillor group, we've actually asked for that communication, especially on social media, to increase, to let the residents know what good works we are actually doing. Now, the Glenelg Shire and the southwest will actually be a powerhouse in the renewable space, and we will lead the country. Innovation, growth, and prosperity will be byproducts of that societal shift for the foreseeable future for the entire Shire. While this survey highlighted that the general community was unsure on Council's overall direction, let me be clear. It will be green, it will be clean, and it will be bright here in the Shire. Our population will increase, new job opportunities, and importantly, providing more employment and training pathways for our youth to stay here. And that's what this council is going to work on coming up. So thank you, councillors. Put this motion. All those in favour? So moved. Item 14.4, Councillor and Staff Interactions Policy. Councillors, there's a recommendation there on page 14. Walker.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move the recommendation that Council adopt the Councillor and Staff Interactions Policy.
Thank you, Councillor Hawker. Who's seconder? Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Any against? Councillor Hawker. Sorry, I asked that question.
The policy purpose is to provide support and guidance for interactions between councillors and staff. It recognises the respective roles. It assists both parties in respecting roles and responsibilities. It maintains transparency, and it supports compliance with the provision of the Local Government Act 2020 and the OH&S and Equal Opportunity Act.
Thank you, Councillor Hawker. Councillor Stevens, would you like anything further?
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, the the Local Government Inspectorate report of last year encouraged all councils across Victoria to develop this policy between councillors and staff with the changes to the Local Government Act of 2020. So the Glenelg Shire councils just fulfilling our role in developing that policy.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Councillors, any further commentary? Councillor Carr? No, all good. All those in favour? So moved, 5-0. .5, councillors, there's a recommendation there on page 16. Councillor Smith?
Happy to move the recommendation, Mr Mayor.
In its entirety?
Yes, sorry, in its entirety.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Carr?
Happy to second, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Councillor Smith, would you like to speak to the motion?
Nothing really extra to add, Mr Mayor. It's part of a process that we've gone through, and the outcome is recorded here for the meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Carr?
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I'm satisfied that the councillor group did the right thing as required by the Code of Conduct. As stated by the Arbiter, was that due to the public nature of the allegations against Councillor Martin, meant that this internal arbitration process was the appropriate way of determining the outcome, and the application was dismissed for reasons as stated in line with the Local Government Act of 2022. With that said, I think the community can make up their own minds on the matter, and all the information is in the minutes.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Councillors, anything further? No? All those in favour? Thank you. 0 so passed. Councillors, item 14.6 on page 18, there's a recommendation there. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move that Council adopt the revised financial hardship policy for rates and charges, please.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. We have a seconder.
Second, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Any against? Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This council has reviewed its hardship policy for rates and charges. I think this has been well talked about in the community across the nation about the hardships that people are facing in all sectors. Councils have had these hardship policies for a long time, and we take these seriously. And I suppose it's a time just to, just publicly advise people that if they are experiencing hardships in paying their rates, it's always best to come to the council staff and discuss that with them, because there are options there for them. But this particular policy obviously just sets out the terms and conditions and sets out all the parameters around what we do when people are facing hardships to pay all their rates and charges. So this is just the revised policy that council needs to adopt.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Councillor Carr.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, it's good that we've got a policy in place for this, and just to add to what Councillor Stevens was saying, the revised financial hardship policy for rates and charges will be available on Council's website and advertised on the rate notices that get sent out. There'll also be some additional content on the rate notices, the ability of a ratepayer to apply for a payment plan, the manner in which payments will be allocated to rates and charges, the range of differential rates applied by council. On top of the notice will have the name and address and all the other requirements. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Councillors, any further commentary? All good. Just before we do proceed, I wouldn't mind just having a quick word there. I didn't actually think I'd say this about a hardship policy, but I'm actually quite proud of ours as far as hardship policy goes. As long as you make it an effort to engage with council over any amounts, council goes above and beyond in helping, as it should. That's what a council should do. So that includes not actually charging any interest when you start any payment plan, something most organisations like banks don't do. Give an extended amount of time to pay, and either enter payment plans to suit the ratepayer, so whether it's weekly, fortnightly, monthly. So this policy has a common sense and dignity at its forefront. So, councillors, that's what I'd like to add there. So, all those in favour? So carried. All right. Councillors, page 21, recommendation 14.7. Councillor Stevens.
Mr Mayor, I'll move the council approve the grant application of $2,000 for the Heritage Grants and Loans Restoration Fund for the conservation works at 134 to 138 Henty Street, Casterton, in accordance with recommendation in Council's Heritage Advisors Report and relevant permits.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. We have a seconder.
Happy to second, Mr Mayor.
Certainly. Any opposed? None opposed. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This has gone through its due diligence through the Heritage grant application process, and I think it's quite straightforward. The total works on this one is, 42,000, and we're applying a $2,000 grant to it, so I'm happy with that.
Councillor Stevens. Councillor Smith.
Nothing further.
Nothing further. Councillors, any further commentary?
No, Mr.
All good, thank you. All those in favour? So moved, 5-0. Councillors, we move for item 14.8 on page 23. There's a recommendation there, councillors. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move that Council approve a grant of $2,500 from the Heritage Grants and Loans Restoration Fund for the conservation works at 7 Julia Street, Portland, in accordance with the recommendations for Council's Heritage Advisory Report and the relevant permits, please.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Is there a seconder? Councillors, I will second that motion for the interests of debate, if no one else is willing to second that. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, this particular application is for a lot of works in relation to the replacement of this roof, and I believe that the maximum we can grant this one is $5,000, the same as the previous one. But in relation to this particular building, I think that a lot of the works are in relation to solar panels and the installation of air conditioning, etc. And given the historical nature of this building, I think that $2,500 for this particular property will be fine.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. As I did second the motion, I'm happy that Councillor Stevens has reduced the amount. It's still part of their heritage grant, and we are discussing that as a council as well. So I'm happy to listen to other councillors' comments regarding this issue. Are there any councillors that wish to speak against the motion or for the motion? No additional commentary?
Oh, I'm happy to speak against.
You can speak against it?
Whilst, thank you, Mr Mayor. Whilst I appreciate the motion that's been tabled is half. We're again finding ourselves in this situation where we've got a policy that gives out ratepayers money. We've got people that purchase buildings in these conditions, and then 12 months later, we've got to hand over hard-earned ratepayers money, for people to do improvements that they already would have known about when they purchased the building. So, hence, I'm not supportive of this application, as I believe the works will go ahead whether we approve it or not.
Councillors, any further commentary? Councillor Smith, Councillor Hawker. Councillor Hawker.
Mr Mayor, I tend to agree with Councillor Carr with what he's saying to do. This has been a bit of a controversial situation in the last few months, and I'm happy to support Councillor Carr.
Thank you. Councillor Stevens, you have a right of reply. Councillor Smith, any commentary? Sorry. Councillor Stevens, you have a right of reply.
No, that's fine. Put it to the vote, Mr Mayor.
Put it to the vote, fair enough. All those in favour of approving the application grant of $2,500 as worded? All those in favour?
Hand down. You and I can be in favour.
Yeah. Well, you can
do it. Put up a motion.
All those against?
Just put up a motion on
Councillors, I think in the interest of this, I would call for a division and ask councillors to please stand, and you do have the option to change the vote if you'd like. All those in favour of the motion at $2,500, please stand.
I'm happy to support it.
Okay.
For the record, Councillor Stevens, Councillor Smith and myself, Councillor Martin. Those against? Councillors Carr and Councillors Hawker. So passed the motion of 3-2, the amount of $2,500. Councillors, move on to page 25. Item 14.9, there's a recommendation there. Councillor Hawker, you've got your hand for a
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move the recommendation that Council issue a notice of decision to grant a permit for use and development of a retail premises, postal agency and sale of packaged liquor, business identification signage and access to Transport Zone 2 at 45 Wyndham Street, Narrawong, in accordance with plans circulated in Attachment 1 and Notice of Decision conditions in Attachment 6.
Thank you, Councillor Hawker. Do we have a seconder? Councillor
Second,
Carr, thank you
Mr.
very
Mayor.
much. Any opposed? No. Councillor Hawker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Every town needs a hub, whether it be a footy club, a general store, a post office or a pub. A post office is the hub of any community. It's a place where people interact. It's a place where people keep connected. It's a place for communication and shopping, a place for trouble sharing, a place of delight when that parcel arrives. I spent my teens living in Narrawong, just down from the church, and I think this is a good location. I have listened, but I also know. We need to be positive by responding to the changing nature of our communities. Australia Post embraces social contribution to small areas, presence, accessibility, trust to the community, supporting vulnerable residents. Just to finish, e-commerce, what can I say? This is the norm now. Did you know that in 2019, 35.9 million parcels were collected from regional post offices?
Thank you, Councillor Hawker. Councillor Carr.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We had 65 submissions, 10 objections and 55 submissions in support. The application is allowed under the planning scheme. The post office is on a highway. It's a good outcome for the Narrawong community to maintain a postal agency and to get a postal agency in the Narrawong community and a retail premise. The post office is important to Narrawong. It's a positive outcome because Narrawong is one of our fastest growing regional townships. So congratulations.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, these are always difficult. We listened to Falls and Against in our consultation process a couple of weeks ago. And the planning scheme is a difficult one for the average person to understand. But as a councillor, I look at the planning scheme and I look at all the ticks that have been given to this particular application. It meets all of those requirements under the scheme. So it does leave councillors as individuals in a quandary sometimes when we've had people that have objected to matters and applications such as this, and we have had a number of these over the years. But just remember, we have listened. Our planning scheme sets down all of the rules. Planning schemes don't have emotions, but I concur with my councillor colleagues that this is a really good retail precinct. It's on a main highway. It does meet all of the requirements under the Transport Zone 2 in Narrawong. And, the rules are the rules and it meets all the requirements. So we're a little bit hand-tied on listening to those objections and actually giving them what they want. So there's always, with the plus, there's always a negative that comes with that, and they are the challenges that we need to meet. And the principles of the planning scheme are quite clear that this is acceptable under our planning scheme.
Councillors. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do support the decision to grant this permit. Although we're in a digital age, a postal service and its associated services is still a vital asset to any community, especially small ones such as Narrawong. Due to the number of objections, this application triggered the hearing process. Both the objectors, supporters and the applicants all made many valid points in which Council considered, as Councillor Stevens said. Much like any permit, the objectors are mostly those who surround the closest area and would be most affected by any changes, which is understandable. And this application was no different. The objectors brought up many good points around amenity, vehicle access and so on. But if you take council out of the equation for the moment, you're still left with people who are neighbours, and being a neighbour is part of being a community, and being part of a community is working together, compromising, empathising, growing, understanding, communicating and enhancing. So all these attributes should go without saying anyway, but between two parties with opposing views, generally these attitudes need to be mutual, and I hope that in this situation, like any other planning matter that is brought to council, that those associated with this application could foster such attitudes. Now, this is a project that I know will assist Narrawong to retain the community strength that it already so proudly possesses.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Anything further?
Can I finish up?
You certainly can, if you like.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Can I just say good on you, Narrawong, and I think the church is an ideal location, and I look forward to watching this space. Thank you to the applicants. You're young, you're full of motivation, so thank you.
Yes, second, Mr Mayor.
All those in favour of the recommendation? So passed. 5-0. Councillors, I to move to item 14.10 on page 28. There is a recommendation there. Councillors, Councillor Hawker's hand is up.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move the recommendation that Council issue a notice of decision to grant a permit to create easement across 18 lots, right of carriageway at Crown Allotments 118, East Street, Narrawong, in accordance with plans circulated in Attachment 1 and notice of decision circulated in Attachment 5.
Thank you, Councillor Hawker. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Carr.
Second, Mr Mayor.
Thank you very much. Any opposed? One opposed. Councillor Hawker.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to say that this permit does not approve any change of use or development of works or changes to the topography of the land.
Thank you, Councillor Carr.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, the application is allowed under the planning scheme. Nothing further to add.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Councillor Smith then goes.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I do not support the granting of this permit associating the easement across 18 lots on the east street of Narrawong, and that's not because I disagree that the planning department aren't doing their job, because they are. This has obviously triggered the permit process as well, so that means it comes to us, and I personally feel that the permit shouldn't be granted, and the applicant has every right to apply for an easement to be created on paper. So, and that's a pretty straightforward planning matter in usual terms. And I know that the applicant actually purchased the land not long before the minister came in and changed the zoning, and in my opinion, at that point, the minister probably should have changed the allotment to stay as one single block at that time, given the planning layers he put on top. But it is a sensitive dune area with wetland running through it, and it was declared as a rural conservation zone, which is fair enough, and inhibits any residential development. Obviously, selling the blocks individually will not change the zoning or ease the restrictions on the land, but it will increase traffic and intervention on the sensitive land. And I cannot guarantee personally that if the blocks are sold to 18 individuals, they would all follow the rules wholeheartedly or respect the sensitivity of the area as one individual owning the lot would.
30 seconds.
I believe it is in the best interest of this council to leave the land in its current form. We have plenty of suitable land left to build on in our shire, and I believe that this block should be left as is.
Thank you. Councillor Smith. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, once again, we had a lot of people supporting this and objecting to it, and a couple of weeks ago we had a planning consultation process. Council's considered all of that, but also we considered the fact that this land sits in a zone which is Rural Conservation Zone 3, under Schedule 3. It's also in a bushfire management overlay. It's subject to inundation overlay, Schedule 1. It's a special control overlay, Schedule 7. This permit being granted does not approve for any change of use or development or works to be carried out or change the topography of the land. And unfortunately, it does meet all the requirements under our planning scheme to issue a notice of decision for an easement on this property. I'm satisfied that it meets the requirements of the planning scheme, and that is my job, and I do support the recommendation that is placed for us on page, whatever page, 28 tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Councillor, if you don't mind, I wouldn't mind, obviously, because it's quite controversial. For myself, I see no reason to go against the notice of decision by the officer to grant the application's request. The application is not seeking for a driveway or a roadway to be built. In fact, some of the objectors stated that it'd be impractical and cost prohibitive to do so, which I'm inclined to actually agree. During the winter, it does flood, so there would need to be significant works to be undertaken to ensure an all-weather road. These works would need to go through a permit, and as we know, it's currently not possible. So I'm also conscious that there's a very narrow window that the land can be used for example, cattle, apiculture, as outlined in the planning scheme document. By not allowing the application, it locks the land parcels, which is not a common sense thing to do. Then there's the obvious problem of property owners being able to access their land to cut grass and reduce the risk of fire. By allowing access, it mitigates these risks and actually protects the area itself. So let me be clear, this application is not a stepping stone to building on the land. It is so there is legal access to the properties, an easement. Any use of the land is subject to the overlays and the local laws. So councillors, all those in favour of these recommendations? Those against? So passed. 4-1. Councillors, item 14.11, recreational reserves and recreational facilities access policy. There's a recommendation there on page 31. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to move the items 1, 2 and 3 in their entirety as printed on page 31.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Councillor Hawker.
I second it.
Thank you. Any opposed? None opposed. Councillor Stevens.
Mr. Mayor, these are quite straightforward. They are what they are. Recreational reserve and recreational facility access policies and pricing. So, excuse me, it is about just clearing up what we have as their amended documents, and it's quite straightforward. So, as it appears.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Councillor Hawker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This policy establishes the minimal requirement of groups seeking a licence, lease or casual hire, principles for the determination of the occupancy, activity use that is prohibited and the usage that's given priority of access, special conditions related to insurance and fees and cancellation. It is a requirement to have a policy, and the principles identified for the development also included sustainable provision, equity of access, fostering application, safe and inclusive environment and shared use of facilities. The casual hire fees for Alexandra Park function rooms imposed ensures that casual hire may be charged in line with the Council's annual fees and charges for Council's venues hire.
Thank you, Councillor Hawker. Councillor Carr.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I suppose one of the drivers, and I'm not going to miss the opportunity to talk about it, is that Alexandra Park Pavilion and all the works going on out there is nearly complete. And this change, it's good that we need to make these changes, and we're going to have a premier facility, you know, within our fleet of facilities that we provide to the community, and the new pavilion will be covered under this new policy, and that's why we're reviewing it, and that's why we'll potentially adopt it at tonight's meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Councillors, any further commentary? No? All those in favour? So moved. 5-0. Councillors, move to item 14.12 on page 34, the Arts and Culture Action Plan. There's a recommendation there, councillors. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Happy to move the recommendation that Council adopts the Arts and Culture Action Plan 2023 through 2024.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. And I will notice that important letter change there. Is there a seconder?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Happy to second.
I'll pick that up. Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Councillors, any opposed? Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Sorry, Councillor Smith. Apologies.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Like many of our other plans, this is another great one, and obviously plans are the way forward, and so we've got benchmarks to set where we're going, obviously, and thank you to Jane and her team for executing this one for us. So, in short, the Arts and Culture Action Plan have some key focus areas. One is to increase recognition of First Peoples cultural heritage. Focus 2, nurture our young creatives through cultural opportunities. Area 3, develop the unique culture, heritage and stories of our area. Focus Area 4, cultivate activation in our creative spaces. Number 5, support and develop our creatives to thrive. And Focus Area 6, use arts and culture to connect the community and inspire ideas. Now, this will be out for public viewing, so for those interested in looking in more depth and seeing what those actions are, certainly take a look at it.
Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The community may remember that we adopted our Arts and Cultural Strategy 2022 to 2026. So this is our action plan for 2023-24. So with an action plan, it actually stipulates, exactly what we're going to do for this financial year. So really good to have a pinpointed document that we can actually tick and flick and go, yep, we met that, we didn't. I'm looking forward to some of the exciting stuff as Councillor Smith has detailed the 6 focus areas, and with this being rolled out across the Shire, we should see some great arts and cultural activities throughout the Glenelg Shire community.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Councillors, any further commentary?
No, I don't think
so. I'd just like to add quickly, Councillor Smith obviously identified those 6 key areas. That actually leads to 21 deliverable outcomes that can be measured either goal-based, process-based or outcome-based. Now, this strategy is based from the feedback from the 2040 plan, the council plan and the municipal public health and wellbeing plan. Again, this is why we go out for community consultation. We ask the community to become involved with what deliverables they want to see in the actual community. The feedback we receive goes into making these strategies and these plans. So, councillors, a recommendation there. All those in favour of that recommendation? So passed. 5-0. Councillors, item 14.13 on page 36. There's a recommendation there. Councillor Carr.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move the recommendation that Council 1 extends the contractual arrangement with Wex Motorpass via the MAV contract NPN 1.17 fuels and lubricants, and 2 authorise the Director of Assets to complete all financial payments and documents relating to this contract. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Councillor Stevens.
Happy to second, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Any opposed? Councillor Carr.
Look, it's pretty straightforward, Mr Mayor, this one. This is our fuel card system that goes into our fleet, and it enables all our vehicles to be filled up at any service station, and all the information comes back to us via a centralised portal. Thank you.
Councillor Stevens.
Mr Mayor, not really. It's quite straightforward. It's a contract for fuel and lubricants. So if we don't have it, we don't go anywhere.
Thank you very much. Councillors, any further commentary? Council? No? Yes? No? Okay. All those in favour? So moved. Item 15, confidential reports. Neil, any urgent business? Councillors? Neil, and that brings us to the closure of the meeting. Thank you very much for everyone for attending the meeting tonight.